Hello. God bless everybody. I hope you're all doing really well. I I'm in my favorite place and I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on something that's recently gone on that I don't really approve of. So, the whole males that are transverting into females using the restrooms. I have no problem with the male to females or the female to males. Like, they have every right to do what they feel is best for them during their life's path. I totally don't want any hate towards them because I feel like nobody should be judged with what they're going through. But the only problem is that the the rate of people that go through with the transition that actually get a vagina or a penis, their bodies suffer after those surgeries and they don't actually live a happier life with the gender that they think they wanted. So and the percentage of people that are transgender and the percentage of men that are going to utilize that and that are child molesters that are going to pretend to be transgender just to go into the women's restrooms to have more opportunities to rape and molest. That's what I have an issue with. So I really think that the transgender community doesn't want this on them. They definitely need to realize that the greater good is about protecting the women that are already using the restrooms. If we get into something that's not worth fighting for, like everybody is already using a restroom right now. So it just doesn't make any sense to put all of the biological women at risk when the small percentage of transgenders that do go through with the surgery don't even have light shed on how their life is going to be like after they make that choice. So if anyone out there is thinking of going through with the surgery, I highly recommend you don't. You're beautiful the way God made you, and I definitely feel like there's more to it than just that.
Snoopy, our little friend, he got cut off.
Oh, you mean you had the sex change?
Yes.
Oh, entirely. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't.
I,
Well, I don't know
uh,
Snoopy. Forgive me for asking. Is there any way? Have you been able to get that back or no?
no, Snoopy. You can. It only becomes a cosmetic appendage when it goes back on. It's non-functioning. So, what's the sense of spending 60 grand to have that hung back on there?
I guess it's kind of like an elk head on the wall. So glad to have this next guest. It came together last minute. We tried to have this gentleman on a while back, and now he's back. So we have him via the Skype. If you're listening terrestrially, you can watch the video. Walt Heyer, author of A Transgender's Faith, or Transgender Faith, or A Transgender's Faith, Walt?
A Transgender's Faith is one of the 5 books I've got.
Okay. And then there's obviously the website, transgendersfaith.com. So, Walt, we wanted to bring you on. We've talked about this a lot this year, obviously, with Caitlyn Jenner. I don't know if you just saw the story. The Olympic Committee now may allow... there you go.
Oh, dear.
May allow male transgender athletes to compete as females, no surgery required, only 1 year of hormone therapy. So, we'll get to that, but let's go backwards. Tell everyone about your story who might not know, the story of Walt Heyer and a transgender's faith.
Right. I started out as a child transgender at the age of 4 or 5. Started cross-dressing then and went throughout my life as a transgender. When I started, it was a few years ago, so there wasn't really all the terms and all the jargon weren't really in place. But, I was just somebody who was, cross-dressing, thinking I was going to become a girl.
Right. So, okay. Let me ask you this before we move on, because I know these are silly questions and you've done so much press and you get them all the time, but a lot of young men watching will have these. So you started out cross-dressing, you said when you were young. Did your parents know and how did they react? Because nowadays parents have to encourage it or it's, hate speech.
Right. Well, I started out at my grandma's for the first 2.5 years. And then my parents found out, and my parents were not happy with grandma.
I wouldn't imagine so.
No, they weren't real pleased. So, but it ended as far as I was concerned. I couldn't go to grandma's anymore, but I was still secretly cross-dressing, even though my parents didn't approve of it. So, you don't stop the behavior. And when people find out about it, especially as many years ago as I did it, it was really carried a great deal of stigma. But so I was, unfortunately, I had an uncle who thought, that I was crazy. Well, I was, but he thought I was crazy, so he decided to sexually molest me because of my cross-dressing.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of things that happened during that period of time. I eventually did get married and had 2 children. I mean, many transgenders are not homosexuals. In fact, Jenner says he's not, but we're not sure of that.
Right.
So that's where I began.
So
that
you were
process.
never gay.
No.
No, you just wanted to be a woman. So let me ask you. So this is for those who don't know. Listen, let me give you some info. Obviously, Walt is no longer a woman. So people go, well, how do we get from there to here? It's a long story. We have a few segments. Stay along with us here. Did you think of yourself as a lesbian woman?
Well, I never did give it that. All I did was I had an identity, a gender identity issue. So I didn't put all these things that we have today in place. I just knew that, I was struggling with my gender identity. I told my future wife I was struggling with it. You didn't hear about it in those days, so we didn't think it was any big deal. And after being married 17 years, I underwent the full gender reassignment surgery. She divorced me, as she should have. I mean, that was appropriate. And my kids struggled with my gender changes. They should have struggled as well. So, and then eventually I started studying psychology at UC Santa Cruz in California and discovered that most transgenders suffer from some kind of mental disorder. And so the biggest challenge that we face with the transgender population is actually having the opportunity to sit down with them and begin to investigate what those disorders are. And there's such a large grouping of them that it takes a real skilled clinician to be able to dig into someone's background and unravel it.
Well, okay, a couple of questions right to that. I have 3 questions that just pop right in. First, what was your mental disorder that you found was the root of your transgenderism?
Okay, well, they called it a dissociative disorder, and that was the idea of my grandmother cross-dressing me. Actually, I began to dissociate from the boy that I was. So it's a simple disorder that can become more complex and actually can evolve into multiple personalities. Mine didn't. It's just called dissociating. That means you dissociate from who you are so that you attempt to become someone who you can never actually be.
So your grandma was the one who started cross-dressing you, or was it your choice and she just sort of helped with it?
Well, that's a good question. That's still an open question. I was 4 years old, so who knows?
Okay, well, that brings me to another question I had, because a lot of parents, you'll see them on Oprah, or I remember the Tyra Banks show. This boy went up and they said, "Now tell him what you call your penis." He said, "My both defect, my penis is," and everyone's like, "Oh, clapping." I'm going, well, hold on a second. Maybe it would be healthier to say, okay, perhaps there's something mentally that would need some addressing here, rather than Lorena vomiting his Doniger and calling him a girl. Do you think that in today's environment, listen, you went to Santa Cruz. In Santa Cruz, nobody is going to tell someone who's a transgender today that there's some kind of underlying psychiatric disorder. Do you think today, and I want to get to the reason why you went back to being a man, do you think today you would have ever come to that conclusion and gone on as your natural sex? Do you think you would have done that?
Had I not discovered the psychological side?
Today, do you think you would have even been put on that path to discover it, or do you think you would have accepted it wholesale and just gone with it?
I can't really speculate. I can just tell you that when I was alarmed to find out that there were so many different psychological and psychiatric disorders, and I wanted to become a counselor, so I started studying and began to look at my own thing. So I don't know what would happen if I was in it today. I don't know if I was in it today, I'd probably blow my brains out. I don't know.
Well, that's the suicide rate. It doesn't get better with the operation. So was it finding this? Okay, so you find out that there are generally psychiatric disorders that underlie this issue. What was it that prompted you to go back to living as a man? What caused that transition?
Well, when you realize a disorder is what's driving you, and then you realize biologically when you go deeper and start studying it, the fact of the matter is nobody Hear me out. Nobody changes from one gender to the other. Biologically, it's categorically impossible. It's the greatest medical fraud in history to say that someone can change genders because you can't do it.
Okay, so when people say you can do it, are they just talking about things that are cosmetic? Is that what you're saying?
That's what they're saying. I can look like a female and I can.
So God bless. I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your day, and may peace be with you.